Hello, today I'm going to present about an innovation called architectural innovation, which is also the title of this paper. This is today's menu. First, I'm going to talk about four types of innovation, then why architectural innovation is important, then the reason why architectural innovation is disruptive for established firms, and then we are going to look at the case of photolithographic aligner industry. Next, I'm going to conclude the presentation with the conclusion. There are four types of innovation, which I will explain further later. But first, we are going to look at incremental and radical innovation. Both of them are the traditional categorization of innovation. Incremental innovation is a better version of an existing design. It involves minor changes that's based on old knowledge. And the innovation exploits potentials of established design. One example would be the Heinz tomato ketchup. The company just flipped the bottle upside down to enhance user experience. It's a very simple innovation. On the other hand, radical innovation is something new to the world. It introduces a radical change that's based on new engineering or scientific knowledge. And the innovation opens up a whole new market and potential application. An example would be the aeroplane by the Wright brothers. And radical innovation is often the basis of successful new entry of a new firm or redefinition of an industry. However, this is not always the case. We will see more details in the case of Xerox and RCA. I guess everyone knows Xerox, the pioneer of plain paper copiers. But do you know, in mid-1970s, Xerox faced a tough competition from many small competitors? These small competitors, mainly from Japan, introduced smaller and more reliable products than of Xerox. And it took Xerox 8 years to realize and to introduce their own competitive product into the market. The irony in this case is that the innovation that the small competitors used was based on Xerox's own technology. The second case is RCA. Same as Xerox, RCA was the leader in its own industry. For RCA, it's in the field of radio technology. In mid-1950, RCA's engineers developed a prototype of portable transistorized radio receiver, but they decided not to pursue the technology because they thought of it as inferior. On the other hand, a much smaller and newer company named Sony used the same technology to enter the US market. Sony's products proved successful, but it was difficult for RCA to match Sony's products, so RCA remained a follower. And again, the irony in this case is that the product used the technology that RCA mastered. Even Sony used technology that's licensed by RCA, but RCA still couldn't catch up. The moral of the story from the case of RCA and Xerox is that minor innovation can be a threat. Why minor? Because the innovations were not something radical. The core technology were mastered by RCA and Xerox, but the innovation that used that old knowledge still disrupts the industry anyway. And this type of innovation is what we will call architectural innovation, and is what we are going to explore further. We are back to these four quadrants of types of innovation. As I've explained before, incremental innovation is the innovation that introduces a better design out of something. And in incremental innovation, the core concepts is still reinforced, and the linkage between core concepts and components are still the same. On the other hand, radical innovation is the total opposite. In radical innovation, the core concepts change, and the linkage between core concepts and components are also changed. And next is modular innovation, which is the type of innovation that change only the core design concepts of a technology. An example would be changing from analog to digital phones. But we are not going to explore this type of innovation further. And lastly, architectural innovation is the innovation that change the relationships between core concepts and the components or a product's architecture, while leaving the core concepts still reinforced. As I've explained in the previous slide, architectural innovation is the innovation that changes the architecture of a product while leaving the core concepts behind. But what is an architecture of a product? To further explain this point, let's take a look at an electric fan. If we look at an electric fan, it has many components, for example, the blade or the motor. And aside from components, it also has its own architecture, which is the way the components will work together and the relationship between each component. And together, this two creates a system that enables the electric fan to move the air in the room. I hope you understand my explanation regarding the types of innovation. To check that, let's take a quiz. Try to categorize this product innovation on your own. Which one is architectural innovation, which one is incremental, and which one is radical innovation. You can pause the video if you'd like. The answer for A is incremental innovation because it basically just changed from an old fan into a better one, like changing the blades to be bigger or the motor to be stronger, for example. And the second one is radical innovation because the change from insulated room air fan into central air conditioning is radical. The whole core design is different and the components and architectural knowledge also differs. Lastly, the change is architectural innovation because the core design concept stays the same, but the architecture of the product changes. These distinctions are important, not to categorize the whole innovation into a strict four quadrants of categorization, but to help us understand why established firms have such a difficulty in adapting to architectural innovation, like what we talk about in the case of RCA and Xerox.